This is Jeremy Zwinger with the Rice Trader, just summarizing the April 15th TRT report. As always, it's great to be able to talk to you and just kind of summarize the key things in the market. We could start by saying it's been a slow but in some ways fast market. We did get the results for the Iraqi trade, as we mentioned late last week. It did go to Brazil, which was unfortunate for the U.S. especially, but also for Asia. On the same note, we have heard that the Vietnamese have actually booked some private business in as well. So it's not as big a deal for all of the Asian players, but definitely for the U.S., which has gone very negative this week, and talks of trying to push Iraq to have to buy from the U.S. On different tenders. So definitely an interesting week as far as that, and we have more to share as far as the U.S. as well in the next few minutes on talking about their supply and demand. What else are we hearing? We also hear in the Egyptian market, they have bought Chinese rice, 114,000 metric tons at a very, very cheap rate for medium short grain at 405 a CIF. It just does continue to highlight the things that we're seeing out of China, that there's been active exports and quantities to export, and the Chinese are not holding back. I continue to say what I've said before. You very much have a good chance the Chinese becoming the third or fourth biggest exporter in the world this year, potentially at one point becoming the biggest. If the trend continues and these stocks continue in China, you'll see them be aggressive in the export market, potentially one of the largest. Moving to the Philippines, it remains to be a historic year for the Philippines. In addition to the elections that are happening in May, there is the continued push for the opening. They have announced the IRR regulations to opening up the trade for the Republic Act 11203. So it's interesting to see how it's flowing out and how you're going to open up trade and what the exact rules will be in the Philippines. Like anything, I think it'll be a bit of time where things open up, but there'll be rules and there'll be shifts, and some of the gray trade will move to the official trade. It for sure is going to be interesting. And really, that's the reason we have the World Conference in the Philippines this year. Where else could you have it when you have one of the largest importers in the world opening up and changing the way they trade? It's really a fascinating year, and really very much looking forward to the World Conference there this year. What else are we seeing? Obviously, it's a bit of a holiday in Thailand with the holidays coming. You know, there hasn't been much action really on that side, much at all. Vietnam, it's definitely got a little stronger over the last few weeks. We've seen some price action for sure, where it had gone as low as 320, 330, and then of course has come back up to 360, and then this week it came back down to 355. And so while Thailand really was unchanged on the holidays, you definitely see a downward movement in Viet on questions of direction. You know, India was also down 5 to 380 for 5%. They remain very, very cheap for brokens at 295, unchanged in the week. You know, Pakistan was also a bit unmoved on holidays and just a few dollars higher. You know, probably the biggest news remains the U.S. and all the challenges they're having with high supply. And I'll show you a couple key graphs today, just how high a supply the U.S. is. Outside of that, we see similar things in Myanmar, definitely slower on the New Year's celebration this week, and really that's about it. It's been a kind of a key time of getting ready for the year, of looking at the crops. That's kind of what we're seeing right now. So let me share my screen a little bit. We'll share a couple of the key graphs this week from the TRT. Of course, every week this is our opening piece where you can kind of look at just the key topics. As it shows here, we do have the monthly updates from the WASDE for the U.S. There's a very, very good monthly or quarterly price update, and of course we have the monthly official data on Pakistan. So let me show you my key graph for this week that I was most shocked by. And again, our team did a great job, especially Mr. Subra, on just summarizing the price, the quarterly review of prices. I really should spend the time to go through it, but I'll be here for a half an hour versus the 10 minutes I like to be just summarizing the TRT. But it's definitely a key look. You're seeing an upward and then now a downward trend in the price action. You definitely, over the last, from 2014 today, you could say, the specialties have gone down up and back up a little bit. The U.S. has spread a little bit. very far away from the Asian origins, way too far in my view, way too far. But you definitely seen similar price actions with some weakness as these global stocks come in. It remains the key point that global supplies remain exceptionally large. For me, this would be the key graph for the week. I know the U.S. is only, it's one of the 5 biggest, but not the largest exporter for sure in the world. But it's definitely a player that is affecting world trade. And we've seen them go to a $150, $200 premium to Asia and think that they could compete, while knowing probably this was not logical, and have quality concerns that have really plagued them as customers in Latin America have moved away from this origin on increased and consistent quality from Asia, and especially great quality from Uruguay, who has done an amazing job of developing their varieties. Well, USDA came in this week. It's a quarterly update or monthly update, which usually the April is not much of a big deal. And they increased all already record stocks from the 49.6 million hundredweights, which was massive and should be leading to massive price declines already. And they took it up 4 million hundredweights more. So if you look at this 53.6 million hundredweights, and you just need to divide by 22.04622 to get metric tons, of course. So it's over 2 million metric tons of paddy. The problem is if you take the last report that USDA made of plantings and you take off and add a similar demand in the export and domestic market, you go from record stocks to next year having such ridiculous stocks that it's unbelievable. And the weather has definitely turned more positive in the U.S., which means some of the earlier concerns on wetness are going away. I know there's still some concerns in Arkansas, definitely Texas. But as we've often said, the growers in the U.S. especially have gotten so mechanized and have so much heavy iron to put in the crop that the weather concerns, especially when it's wetness, dryness will always have a much greater effect than wetness. But this is the type of oversupply situation we're seeing. And it mirrors what's going on in China. It mirrors what's going on in the world. And why I have such a hard time getting bullish on any of the markets, especially when, and I'm just going to move to it. So usually I don't go to my overall things, but I really am a very big fan of this website. Let's just pull her out here and go full screen. I like the DTNfarms.com website. You look at this and you can look at the rice futures. I continue to believe that this is a big mistake. When you're seeing what's called a full carry, a carry to the new crop, when the market is telling you it's going to be oversupplied, the market should have flipped, and it's called inversion. There should be cheaper price in new crop, not more expensive. That's a big advantage for those who play the numbers in my book. But you have these hugely cheap futures prices in soybeans and corn and wheat. And you look at the deferred contracts, they're just not much better. You're talking about $9 beans. It's hard for a grower in the U.S. or worldwide to make money. $3.60 corn, very difficult. So these are the type of things you look at overall. So we continue to come back to this heavy supply situation, heavy issues overall of what do you do when the market is saying it's oversupplied. What happens? So that's the key graph. It's same thing in medium grain. I continue to be relatively negative medium grain, even with the Australian drought. There is major problems in oversupply. Vietnam's going to have a massive carry. They're going to have a big crop. The U.S. is going to very likely put another big crop in California and the South. And we'll definitely know in the next 4 weeks what happens there because weather could shift it. So outside of that, we can run the prices for the week, which we've already gone through, key things. I continue to love this graph. It's my favorite graph most weeks because I love watching the world trade shift and as we get with real numbers. And it just definitely shows that the overall key players are off about 10% on this year, which is a very slow start to the first quarter. And we'll see what happens. I think you'll see Vietnam catch up a bit on their very cheap prices early on. But the slowness of trade is affecting these markets significantly, which really just comes back to the high supply. But let's run down to the last section, and let's look at the price section. In addition, again, I'm going very quick because I've already gone almost 9 minutes. The section on Pakistan is just a very good section, really going in depth every once a month on the Pakistan trade. Great graphs, great individual trades. It just shows how Pakistan is a bit of a difference from the rest of the major 5. definitely looking up on the year. We could be looking towards probably 2015 type levels of trade. But again, let's get into the price section, and then it'll just show some key things. Really, it's a very long section, and as always, it's summarized in the top. I mean, I can give these key points. We definitely see a softer trend. These global stocks are affecting it, but we always go to great efforts to try to summarize the key things because everybody's so busy. Do these videos for you, summarize the key points, and go through the key things. But you're looking at weaker prices for sure, higher supplies. There's going to be a more move to grow some of the key specialties this year, which will probably take their premium down, it seems. And there's a lot of individual trades that we go into, and you can look at the various markets and the various flows. There is a lot of price action going on, and the markets are adjusting. And one of the key points we've already made is just the spread from the U.S. to the Asians. It cannot continue. The Asian markets will continue to take over the U.S. markets dramatically, which you're going to see a panic in the U.S. on these type of numbers. I've said it in my section in my weekly talks. You could see rice go to USDA loan in a situation like this, which makes these futures rice prices way too high with this level of supply. So again, a very interesting week, very interesting price action, a huge jump in this year on the big specialties, which I think you're going to see some leveling off in the coming year, just because it's gotten a bit out of line, and it really runs in a 2-year cycle of huge spreads and then back down again. So with that, that's kind of my thoughts for this week. Is a good summary. As always, I just welcome you guys to ask us questions and continue to push us to excellence and asking for sections. I know there's other players out there that are trying to talk about markets, and they may be more colorful. I continue to believe we're the Wall Street Journal of rice. We put out 80 pages a week. We bring out high-level data, good discussions on markets, and it's really high-end intellect and thoughts on where the market's going and what's happening. So with that, I just want to, of course, welcome you to the World Conference again. That'll be in November 11 to 13. We're also going to be throwing one heck of a fun time here in California on the August 1st. We'll be having a flyer out next week, which will give tours. We're going to, have some fun. We're having a beer contest with rice. It'd be a good time for all of our clients to come out to California and enjoy a reunion of sorts of all of our friends. With that, that's all I really have for this week. I appreciate all of you listening. I hope this is helpful to our clients. With that, Jeremy Zwingler is going to sign off for the Rice Trader, and look forward to talking to you next week.